When you take a moment to journal about what you'd like to be able to do in the new year, or when people ask you about your resolutions, your wishes, or intentions for the new year, consider your wishes about how you would like to communicate. Let me give you some examples I often hear from my clients. I want to use words that bring more kindness to my life and my closest relationships. I'd like to judge others less, so that I can have fewer arguments and more connection. I'd like to speak my truth with confidence and compassion and learn to set boundaries without losing relationships. Can you imagine what it could be like for you to have this kind of New Year resolution?
I don't like to argue, so I say nothing and fume for days.
How do I set boundaries without sounding like a jerk?
I hate the idea that I might accidentally offend somebody, so sometimes I'd just rather say nothing at all.
Welcome to the Language Alchemy Podcast, and thank you for joining me today. This is your host, Alejandra Siroca, a transformative communication teacher and coach devoted to helping you have more peace and more harmony in all your relationships. Something that a lot of people talk about during the beginning of the year is the wishes, resolutions, and intentions that we have for the year ahead. And when people usually ask about these wishes or resolutions about the new year, we tend to talk about wanting to start a new hobby, like knitting or painting, or wishing to create a new habit, like having a regular meditation or yoga practice, or learning a new skill, like gardening or carpentry, or maybe wanting to lose some weight or doing more volunteering. And while all these things are wonderful and can definitely contribute to your life, I want to invite you to go deeper this year and give yourself the opportunity to consider how you would like to communicate in this new year. So in this episode, let's talk about your communication intentions. If you've been listening to me for a while, or even if this is your first Language Alchemy podcast, I'd like to share with you that language is one of the most powerful tools we have available to us at any given moment. Yes, it's powerful because the way we communicate can help us transform our lives. The language we use can contribute to healthier relationships, to healing our emotional wounds, and helping us show up as the mature human being that's needed in our homes, work environments, and communities. So when you take a moment to journal about what you'd like to be able to do in the new year, or when people ask you about your resolutions, your wishes, or intentions for the new year, consider your wishes about how you would like to communicate. Let me give you some examples I often hear from my clients. I want to use words that bring more kindness to my life and my closest relationships. I'd like to judge others less, so that I can have fewer arguments and more connection. I'd like to speak my truth with confidence and compassion and learn to set boundaries without losing relationships. Can you imagine what it could be like for you to have this kind of New Year resolution? Having done this myself with my beloved Matthew and friends over the New Year's, I can tell you that sharing about how you would like to communicate immediately sparks deep and meaningful conversations. Can you see how sharing an intention like this about your communication can lead to wonderful conversations with others? Now, imagine if everybody around you also shared their communication intentions. So when you ask them, what intentions do you have for the new year? And you hear, I want to be more open to reveal what's in my heart. Or, I want to say what I mean with compassion and clarity. Or, I want to release the fear that my needs don't matter and have the courage to ask for what I need. Wow, I know if you heard that from others, that would definitely deepen the connection you feel with them. And can you imagine if you and your partner shared your communication intentions with each other? Or if your whole family or circle of friends did that? I dream of a world where we all share our authentic communication intentions with one another and then encourage one another to fulfill those communication intentions. Why? Because I've seen it. During this past year, I've had the honor to witness some people do this, and I honestly get the goosebumps when I hear them talk about what focusing on their communication intentions did for them. So that's what I want for you and for the whole world. Let me give you some examples. A client of mine had the intention of learning how to set boundaries with her manager because she really wanted to have more balance and well-being in her life. During the past year, she learned to do this, and her whole team started relating to her differently, with greater respect. Then, when her manager left, her team asked her to apply for the position because she had learned to become a leader worth following. Another beautiful person I had the privilege of coaching had the intention to learn to connect to and communicate her feelings and needs. During our coaching sessions, she realized she needed to serve the world in a sustainable way for her health. And she was able to communicate all this to her partner and get his complete support to switch careers. And now she is on her way to be a coach herself and help others who, like her, do great social justice and equity work without getting burnout from giving so much to others and so little to themselves. And when a couple I worked with had the intention of learning how to communicate with each other with openness and kindness when they had disagreements, and they committed themselves to this intention, they were able to shift their perspective that disagreements always led to fights. And they started to see their disagreements as a way to understand each other at a deeper level. And I'm so happy to share that they just got married a few weeks ago. So you see, one of the most powerful things you can do during the beginning of a new year is to consider what intentions and wishes you have for yourself about the way you communicate. And because I love supporting you in your authentic and conscious communication journey, I have 4 questions for you that can help you connect with your communication intentions for this new year. If you need to, press the pause button and go grab your journal. These 4 questions are: first, what or how would you like to be able to communicate in the new year? Secondly, when you are able to communicate in this way, what would that give you? Thirdly, how will you know you are able to communicate in this way? And number 4, what are some steps you need to take to fulfill your communication intention? Let me give you an example with myself. As I frequently share here on the podcast, I will be a communication student for life. For as long as I'm alive, I know I will have new situations in which I will have the opportunity to communicate with new or renewed clarity, confidence, and compassion. So here we go. In the new year, I am committed to communicate my own feelings more often with my closest friends. Sometimes I find myself holding more space for others than sharing about my own feelings. So that's my intention. Second question, when I am able to communicate that way, what would that give me? To answer that question, I would say that in this new year, I am committed to communicating my own feelings more often with my closest friends. Sometimes I find myself holding more space for others than sharing about my own feelings. So that's my communication intention. Second question, when I'm able to communicate that way, what would that give me? Well, it would give me a sense of connection, companionship, warmth, meaning, and love. Third question, how will I know when I'm able to communicate that way? Because I would hear myself mentioning feeling words to my friends. Because I would also pause just for a second longer when I hear a friend ask me, "So, how are you?" And the last question, what are some steps I need to take? Well, the first one is that when I talk to my close friends about my intentions for the new year, I will share that one of my communication intentions is to share my feelings with them more often. Another step I will take is that I will pause to connect with my feelings when a dear friend asks me how I am, instead of saying, "I am well, and how are you?" And another step is that I will check in at the end of a conversation to notice the times in which I did share my feelings. So there you have it. I shared my intentions with you, and now I would love to hear from you about your communication intentions. If you are on my mailing list and you get my weekly emails, you know I respond to you when you email me. So please do and share your communication intentions with me. And if you're not in my mailing list, go to my website, languagealchemy.com, and join my list. So here are the 4 questions that I'd love for you to share with me. Number 1, what or how would you like to be able to communicate in the new year? Number 2, when you are able to communicate this way, what would that give you? Number 3, how will you know you are able to communicate in this way? And number 4, what are some steps you need to take? So take a moment, journal about your communication intentions, share them with me, with the closest people in your life, and make a commitment to follow through on your communication intentions. Now, if you'd like to learn how to follow through on your intentions, I will talk about that in the next episode. For now, before we recap what you've heard in this episode, if you want to have meaningful conversations about your communication intentions with the people in your life, share this episode with them. And then check in with one another. Okay, let's recap what you've heard. First, I talked about having New Year's resolutions and intentions about how you would like to communicate in the new year. Then, I shared with you why this is important and the benefits it can bring to your life when you have intentions about your communication. I then gave you several examples of communication intentions. And finally, I invited you to ask yourself 4 questions so that you can connect to your own communication intentions for the new year. My wish for you this year is that you bring your communication intentions to fruition and that you take the steps you need to communicate in the way that your precious heart longs for. You'll hear from me next week when I teach you about how to follow through on your communication intentions. Once again, Happy New Year. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. I also want to thank my client Kristen for the work she's doing to fulfill her intention of communicating with patience and confidence with her partner and her son. Until next week, and as we say in Argentina, ciao ciao. Original music by Gary LaPoe. You can find all links in the show notes at languagealchemy.com.